We have one study session topic for tonight. Up first is Parks and Rec's Director Christina Underhill, along with Cultural Arts Manager Beth Lafferty and Patron Experience Librarian Carrie Watson here to discuss the library staffing. Good evening, Director Underhill.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I am Christina Underhill, the Parks, Recreation, Library, and Golf Director. Tonight joining me is Beth Lafferty, Library and Cultural Arts Manager, Carrie Watson, who is our Patron Experience Librarian, as well as many of our library board members are here this evening to address you if you have questions for them. So I'll invite Beth Lafferty and Carrie Watson up to discuss staffing and safety issues we're experiencing in the library.
Thank you, Christina. Good evening, Mayor and Council members. I'm Bethany Lafferty, and this is Carrie Watson. One thing before I start our presentation, I just want to point out there is a small typo in your study session memo that references plans 1 and 2. They should be referred to as plans 2 and 3. The presentation does have all the corrections. So tonight we're going to present some of the challenges the library has faced this last year, as well as propose solutions to reduce the challenges and make the library a safe place for all. Grab that, sorry. So we're going to review these items: library safety concerns, potential physical upgrades, current staffing status, staffing comparisons to other comparable libraries, our proposed solutions, the library board recommendation, and then an opportunity for questions. So the first part is to discuss the safety and security issues that we have in the library. This is all based kind of on our fourth quarter totals. And a few example incidents that we wanted to highlight was on October 3rd, where we had a mentally ill patron verbally assaulting a staff member, and it just became so out of hand that we had to call police. And then later on in that month, we had 2 patrons arguing that staff were trying to de-escalate, and it turned into one of the patrons pulling a knife in the library, which was very scary for the staff. The weekend of November 5th and 6th, that was a Saturday and a Sunday, we were very short on staff. We had our bare minimum of 3 people. Actually, I think it was 4 people each day. And the staff just become very hyper vigilant and keeping an eye on things, and it just makes it a really tense situation. We also had an incident where there was a patron kind of stalking one of the staff members that had to be talked to and asked to leave. And then on December 6th, this is kind of another side of some of the incidents we incur in the library, that there was a patron who had a seizure while sitting on a bench in the library. I happened to be in a meeting in one of the rooms right next to it and heard the gentleman fall on the ground, and we were able to call EMS. But that's just another example of some of the incidents we incur in the library. Other situations are patrons viewing pornography, people smoking or vaping, fighting each other, non-compliance with staff directions, stalking staff members, as I mentioned, stealing library property or destruction of library property, drug and alcohol use in the library or bathrooms, offensive language, and then emergency medical, and also weapons. We have been provided with tools from the City Attorney's Office in the form of the standards of behavior, which are applicable to all City of Englewood facilities. And so this has been really helpful for us to point to the rules and inform people that this is how they have to behave appropriately in the library, and then we can utilize additional tools to either eject people for 24 hours or exclude them based on violations of the standards of behavior from anywhere from 45 days up to as much as 120. In the last quarter, we had 12 incident reports in October, 20 in November, and just for the first 20 days of December, we had 10 incidents. Some physical upgrades that have been discussed for the library, one of the short-term solutions we've come up with is to utilize the south entrance only, so that's the entrance that goes to the parking garage, and have that be the single entry point to the library, so closing the library entrance in the north lobby. That would allow staff to more easily monitor the entering and exiting of patrons and address any issues that might arise more immediately. Long term, there's going to be a feasibility study for the construction of a single entrance on the east side of the building. So that's the kind of window that goes out onto that walkway between the Civic Center and the former 24-hour fitness building. That kind of center point does create some equity of access from both the circle and the parking garage. And then this would help make it more secure in the Civic Center lobbies after normal business hours, because patrons could enter the library from an external doorway into the library rather than coming into the lobbies. There's also been additional discussion regarding additional contract security. However, at this time, we have discussed with Public Works to try some different strategies with the existing contract security that monitors the building inside and the outside property. So we're trying to do some tweaks with that for some added security presence. Okay, and Carrie's gonna talk about this next part.
Good evening, everyone. So just to kind of recap where we are currently in our current staffing status, you can see in your notes and on the presentation kind of where we are right now. As we studied exactly how many staff hours were necessary to kind of safely and fully secure the library and staff the library at each service point, the kind of magic number we came up with was 380 hours. Currently, we only have 11 library associates that work 20 hours a week, which provides 220 staff hours. So right off the bat, you can see that we have a great shortfall when it comes to staffing the library. Currently, to fill those gaps, the supervisors, of which there are 5 of us full-time members in the library, spend up to 50% of our work week or more at the service point desk. When we do this, you can see the administration has to take place no matter what. So what begins to lack is the time for planning and programming. Only 15% of our week max is able to be dedicated to planning for programs and services that the library can offer. This means that we've had to cancel classes such as computer classes, writing groups, book clubs, and that we've had to suspend nearly completely the growth of our local history and archives, any senior center outreach that we've been doing, and kind of our whole social media promotion has almost come to a halt just because of the severe lack of staff that we have currently. Our library associates, like I said, of which we have 11 right now, 3 of which today is their first day, so we've been kind of working with only 8 up to now, are spending all of their time on the library floor and very little time doing anything else. So this was kind of one of our most striking comparisons that we've found. As you can see, Littleton is the next biggest library kind of population service area in comparison to Englewood at 45,000 compared to our service population of 33,000. They're open just a few hours more each week than we are at 64 hours a week. We're open 60, and yet when you look at their staff, they have twice the amount of staff we have. As you can see, we have it broken down as 15 FTE with 5 of that being full-time. So that means that the 10 other FTEs are all part-time employees that are the 0.5 FTE. As you can see, Littleton has over twice the amount of full-time staff that we do, and their budget is twice what ours is. So we're operating with under half of the resources that our most comparable library has. And I think that can kind of show you why we are feeling the strain and the struggle that we are feeling. We're trying to operate at the same level as a library like Littleton, open almost the exact same number of hours, but with half the amount of resources that they have. So, kind of the first plan that we have to offer you is what we're calling the status quo with service reduction. That's as if we can't do any change to our budget, can't do any additional hiring. What we are going to have to do is significantly reduce our service operations. In order to safely and fully staff each of our service points, we would have to close the library 2 days a week and only be open 5 days a week. We would also have to reduce the number of hours that we would be open. Right now, we're open from 9:30 to 7:30 Monday through Thursday. We'd have to trim that back to at least 10 to 7 or 10 to 6 on some of those days, and 10 to 5 or 12 to 5 on some of those other weekend days. It would also mean that we would have to continue reducing the programs that we are offering inside the library. And obviously, this is not a scenario that any of us are really comfortable with, but it's the only way that we would be able to adequately staff the library anytime our doors are open. And I'll let Beth pick up.
So this next plan is kind of the most comprehensive plan where we would request the ability to hire 4 full-time librarians and 2 additional part-time library associates with funding to expand programs and services, because with additional staff, we would be able to do additional things. The staff work hours needed each week would be 380. And with these additional staff members, we would be able to cover 100% of the library floor needs. Supervisors would be able to spend half of their time on planning and presenting programs or outreach, continuing to work on their administrative duties, and would only spend 15% of their time on the library floor. And the new librarian positions would spend 50% of their time on the library floor, with the rest of their time being split between planning and program presentation. And then similar for the library associates, they'd have a little bit less time on the floor and then time allocated for planning and program presentation. Having the 4 librarians would allow us to grow the Englewood archives and really get it organized and usable for the public, and would allow us to expand the local history collection that was launched at the beginning of 2022. We'd be able to fully develop a lending collection of non-traditional items. We'd be able to increase our programs for all ages, children, teens, and adults. Start doing outreach services and activities, and this would allow for a 7-day service operation. We are currently closed on Sundays right now because we really just don't have enough staff currently to adequately cover Saturdays and Sundays, so we are closed on Sundays right now, and having this additional staff would allow us to get back to that full number of hours per week. The next plan is an additional increase to staff, but not quite as much, only 2 full-time librarians and 4 part-time associates, and some additional funding for program expansion, because this is still an increase to staffing and would allow us to do more things within the community. We would still be able to cover those 380 hours of library floor work each week and continue to do a 7-day service operation. The allocation of workload would be a little bit different from that previous plan, but still really similar. And then the outcomes, the main difference for this plan is that we would not have enough full-time positions to allocate somebody for the archives and local history. So that would be the biggest difference, is eliminating the ability to really focus on that and have somebody dedicated to that. But we would still be able to do some development of the non-traditional lending collection, some increase to youth programs, growth to adult programs, and then a moderate development of outreach activities. The final plan is just a mild increase to staff. This would be 2 full-time librarians and minimal amount to expand programs, which would mostly go towards adult programming and a little bit to the development of the non-traditional collection. The allocation of workload still becomes a little bit heavier for the librarians and the associates, as well as more library floor time for the supervisors. We don't quite have enough to get to 380 hours a week with this level of staffing. So this plan would include a 6-day service operation with reduced hours, which could either be, I think it would just continue to be Monday through Saturday, so we'd continue to be closed on Sundays, but reduce the hours, as Carrie mentioned, to 10 to 7 and 10 to 5 on Fridays and Saturdays. We still would have a little bit of a shortfall, and that's where that increase in the supervisor's time on the library floor would come from. Okay.
So on this slide, you can just see each of the plans kind of side by side, kind of drawing out the differences between them. When we originally presented these 4 plans to the board, we had them organized this way, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we've kind of changed them around, so that's why the numbering looks a little bit different. But as you can kind of see as you look through this, the top 2 plans still give us the ability to be open 7 days a week, and really increase our ability to expand programming within the community and know that our library is fully staffed at each service point anytime our doors are open. This is kind of showing you what it could look like if we had that first plan that we're now calling Plan 2. And you can see highlighted in yellow that we're much closer to, even though we're not meeting the same kind of numbers as Littleton, when you think about that our service population is about 2/3 the size as Littleton, it kind of gets us closer to what would be 2/3 of each of those numbers. So I don't think these increases, even though they feel kind of dramatic, they're still just getting close to what would be comparable to some of our comparable libraries. So even though it looks like a big budget jump, it's still nowhere near what our area libraries are operating with.
And then just to reiterate that the library board was in favor of either Plan 2, the full staffing increase, with a minimum of the Plan 3, which is the 2 full-time and 4 part-time staff. So those were their kind of recommendations. So we really thank you for your time and consideration, and we're looking for direction from the council this evening for which plan you would like to see us move forward with. And then if you have any questions, myself or Carrie, or even Christina, and then we do have some board members here if you wanted to address any questions directly to the board.
Ms. Lafferty and Ms. Watson, thank you very much for the presentation. I also want to thank the board members for the letters of support that we received over the past couple of days. So actually, I'll open up to members of the library board if they want to say something before we open it up to questions. So obviously not necessary, but it's not necessary at this point, but really appreciate it. But I'll open up to questions for members of council. Member Wink, if you'd like to get us started.
Thanks, Mayor. Thank you for the different levels of detail here to support your requests. And, you know, you've made a clear case for the need of augmenting your staff. What I still don't feel maybe I'm satisfied with, maybe, for your benefit, is the proposed solutions. And you did mention, obviously, there isn't a silver bullet, right? There's short of extreme measures, right? How can we really manage the security issues? And I like the idea of, you know, at least consolidating the entry exit points so you can monitor better, sure. But I'm wondering what else. I mean, how extensively did your team get together to explore the security resolution? I mean, did you explore anything with the police team?
We did have a meeting with Police Chief Watson and Deputy Chief Fender, as well as Sean Lewis and Tamara Niles, and all of the library supervisors and Christina and myself at the beginning of November to discuss what kind of our day-to-day issues are. I have been working really closely with Tamara as well as the prosecuting attorney Ian Griffin for guidance and advice on how to address some of the problems that we're encountering. One of the big concerns is that we are often outnumbered by the patrons in the library. We have been for, I think it was in October, we started doing an hourly in-house count. And on average, there's about 30 to 40 people in the library at any given time. And we often only have sometimes 4 or 5 library staff on the floor. And so that can be really challenging. And one of the problems, I forgot to point this out in an earlier example about the night when there was a fight and a patron pulled a knife. We only had 4 staff members there, including our security specialist. The security specialist and the person in charge were addressing the fight and trying to de-escalate everything. And the entire time there was a patron using the computers who kept asking the librarian in charge for help with the computers because we didn't have anybody else to help in the reference and computer area because the other 2 staff members were helping in circulation and assisting patrons either in person or on the phone. So that's one of the issues with security that we get into is we are kind of outnumbered.
So you really do feel you can meet that challenge much, much better. Not completely, obviously, but much better with the staff
Another
increase.
example is just this evening, we had to close the library at 5 p.m. because we only had 1 staff member scheduled from 5 to 7:30.
Right.
And so that's another one of our staffing issues that we had kind of ongoing, where we have had to do that a couple times. And I think that's actually what really led us to close on Sundays, is then we can move everybody to Saturdays so we're not at risk of saying we only have 2 staff members here. Because if somebody calls out sick, and it's that time of year, so that happens, and then we really just are on bare bones with staffing, and it makes it really tense for the staff too, because they're on edge, and as I mentioned before, hyper vigilant for something to go wrong, because we're in a position where we're very vulnerable as staff members if something gets out of hand in the library. And we know we can call on the Englewood PD to come and help us, and they do, and they respond. Sometimes people leave before they get there, and but it helps to know that we can call them. But sometimes things escalate before they can get there, and we just don't want to see it getting any worse.
All right, you've answered everything. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Member Wink. Member Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the presentation. And I'd like to just start by just apologizing that we didn't do something about this sooner. I think, ultimately, I can only speak for myself, but ultimately it's City Council's responsibility to make sure we keep our staff members in a position where they're safe and confident that they can execute the job that they're given to do. And so I regret that we haven't, didn't see this coming. I know things have changed over the last few years, and hope that we can certainly come to a solution, or certainly we will come to a solution. I think that brings some safety to the library. My question is just regarding the hours that are proposed here in terms of the 7-day-a-week hours. Are these the same hours that historically the library has been operating at, and have there been changes in those hours over the years?
I can't really speak to that, I'll be honest with you. I did begin this position at the end of April of 2022. So when I first began, the hours were 9:30 to 7:30, Monday through Thursday, 9:30 to 5, Friday and Saturday, and 12 to 5 on Sunday. They may have shrunk those back from pre-COVID hours. I'm not sure. And I've actually asked some of the longer serving staff that they were like, we don't really remember when we might have changed it to these kind of half-hour start and end. But definitely one of the things that I think would be possible with a significant increase in staff is to review what those hours are. Because I feel like they probably were 9 to 8 and 9 to 5 on Fridays and Saturdays. Sundays probably was still 12 to 5. A lot of libraries in the metro area on Sundays are actually only open 1 to 5 on Sundays. So I think that would be something to consider if we were able to significantly increase the staff, that we could examine how would it look if we added a half hour on these days. So I don't think that's out of the question to increase the service hours over time.
Yeah.
But as far as I know, what we've been operating at is kind of what it had been for a while.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Member Noonan-Camp?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. I have the privilege of sitting on the Public Library Board as the council liaison, and so I've heard some of this information before, but I have a couple of questions for you tonight. One is about the differences between, I think we're calling them plans 2 and 3. Plan 2 has 4 full-time librarians and 2 part-time, versus Plan 3 has 2 full-time and 4 part-time. I'm aware that we have experienced staffing challenges in the library, especially with turnover, right? Just the ability to hire and then we lose someone, and we hire and then we lose someone. And it seems like a lot of that is concentrated in part-time staff. Can you speak to the differences between these, one having more full-time members, and how would that impact your staffing?
Yeah, I certainly think that having more full-time staff would create more stability within the staff framework overall. We have, since I started, we've turned over the part-time staff, I think at least 50 to 75%, because we hired 5 new people in the summer, and then a couple of those people even quit right away, and then some people that started at the beginning of 2022 left by the fall, and we were rehiring again. That's the hiring that we just completed at the end of November, and folks started today. So that turnover of the part-timers, you know, we have a couple part-timers who have been here for several years, but a lot of them are like 6 months to 18 months is the amount of time that they spend in employment. And I think if we had some more the full-time staff that we have, 2 of the full-timers have been there for 1 10 years and 1 7 years. I am new, and our 2 other supervisors, Carrie has actually started out as a library associate and was promoted, and so she's been with the library for a little over a year, and then Corinne, our other supervisor, has been here for I think 4 or 5 years now. So being able to move into a full-time position really will create some greater longevity and stability in the staffing.
That's helpful. Thank you for that illumination. My second question is, this is such a helpful picture into what it's been like for you in the library. And in many ways, you are serving as the front lines for our city in serving a really diverse population that we have in our community. And I'm really grateful for the work that you do in that. We also have a normal budget process, right? Where we typically hear these kinds of requests, and you're coming to us tonight with a supplemental request. Can you just share with us why we're hearing this information now and maybe why we didn't hear it in our budget process?
Sure. Yeah, of course. Well, through the regular budget process for the 2023 planning, I did start it was about halfway through. Yeah. So I was kind of jumping in, trying to catch up as quickly as I could. We did have a request for 2 full-time positions in that 2023 proposal. And really, I spent a lot of the first 3 to 6 months kind of just getting a lay of the land within the library and the city. And just in the last few months was able to really dive into my analysis of the staffing situation. We were already short-staffed when I started. I had to hire 2 library supervisors, 5 library associates, within my first couple of months. So that was really kind of hard, and it took a little time to really see, when we have full staffing, is that enough? So because I was kind of coming in at such an awkward time, we did try to put in there a request for 2 full-time people, but that was not approved. And so as I dug deeper into it, that's where I started coming up with, we need to make some significant changes to our operation here to be safe and to be able to provide what we want to provide for the community. So that's kind of how this all started building up.
It's really helpful, and thank you so much.
Member Russell.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the presentation. I appreciate the problems that you're having. In your example of Littleton, did you check on the number of people that go in and out of the library every day over the course of time? How does that compare to the number of people that come in and out of Englewood every day? And what is Englewood doing to keep their people safe? Did you check on any of those things?
I believe that there is probably data available in the research database that I accessed for some of that information regarding their patron visits. And honestly, I do think it's significantly higher than what we have. Their circulation rate is significantly higher than Englewood. I didn't really look at the number of programs they offer each week or anything like that to compare that kind of stuff. We don't offer a lot of programs already, so it seems pretty clear that they probably offer a lot more than we do without even checking. And I've talked with I did have a meeting with the director of the Bemis Library in Littleton a few months back to just kind of discuss how her staffing situation was structured, what kind of issues that they face in their library. They don't have a significant security issue. They do have a Littleton police officer scheduled 20 hours a week at their library, and I believe it's like 2 to 4 hours a day, and then Monday through Friday, and then for like 4 hours on Saturday, or maybe a little bit more on Saturday. I don't think there's anybody there on Sunday, but they don't have the same degree of security and safety problems that we encounter at Englewood Library.
Right, and that was my suspicion. So I appreciate that information. Thank you.
Member Woodward, and then Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you for your presentation, and I'm very supportive of the choices that you've provided us with. The question is, where do we find the funding to do it? So, and that's up to us, I guess. I do have a few questions that I'm just curious about here. I noticed you had mentioned about the patrons viewing pornography. I thought our IT department had blocked all pornography.
There is a degree of blocking software that is inherent in the web browsers that people can access. But there are ways that they will work around that. One of our most prevalent patron who does this often views things through private messaging. So it's not even like going to a website that's like specific for displaying pornography. There's like pornographic images being sent through email as attachments or private messages on social media. And that's sort of like the weird workaround that they find. And then I think that there's just other ways that they find different images that may not legally be considered pornography, but are wildly inappropriate in a public place, especially for children, because the computers are just in an open area. They are available for youth and teen to use. So we try to really be cognizant of people looking at inappropriate images, and especially if patrons bring those concerns to us. And I think majority of the time we know about it when a patron brings the concern to staff to say this person's looking at things that are disturbing.
Okay. Another question I have. Cameras, do we have cameras behind the desk or video behind the desk of all the entrances, of both entrances currently?
Yes, so the library staff does have access to a variety of cameras within the library, as well as cameras in both the north and south lobbies. We have acted upon things we have seen on the security cameras. We have issued exclusions to individuals who have violated the standards of behaviors from things we've seen on the cameras. And, you know, after conferring with City Attorney Niles, I knew that we were able to, even if we didn't see it firsthand with our own eyes, that we could make those decisions to exclude people. And so that has predominantly happened with drug use or alcohol consumption and like fighting and things like that. So the cameras definitely aid us a great deal.
Yeah, I understand that it's almost impossible to assign somebody you watched the cameras today.
Yeah.
That's rough. Another question I have that isn't addressed here and shouldn't be, but based on what has happened up in Boulder last week, has there been any discussion or any
Would you like
talking
to
about checking our restrooms, ventilation systems?
It's a very good question, and yes, Public Works or Facilities Manager has already reached out to a company to come and do an assessment. So we're gonna get a quote on that and then move forward if the price is reasonable and not too outrageous. And then figure out remediation if it does come back positive.
Great.
So it's in
thank you.
progress.
Thank you. Last item I have is if we were to open up the east side for an entrance, physically, it seems to me that you'd be so far away from the main desk. Does it make sense to move the main desk more to the center?
That would be part of the study, is to see like how the entrance would be, because we've talked with some of the people from Public Works. Would we have the entrance start on the outside of the building and then come in, or would it be like a vestibule inside the building? And then we would have to relocate our service points as well as our patron computers. So it would require a significant kind of remodeling, not really remodeling, I guess, like reorganizing of the service points and the furniture and the public computers. So we definitely would have to do that to give ourselves a good view of the library floor and have a good flow for patrons to come through to utilize the library. So those are things that we are working on as we do the feasibility study for constructing the entrance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Well, you've certainly done your homework, and I appreciate what the board has done, and I'm in support of doing something. I don't know what that is based on finances. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Woodward. Mayor Pro Tem.
I'll defer to Member Anderson, who signaled his intent to speak during the discussion on pornography, so I think we should let that subject go before I make my comments.
Member Anderson?
Yeah, that is the question I had. I mean, the implication that we have repeat offenders of this makes me wonder, I don't know, maybe this is for City Attorney Niles, if that couldn't be incorporated into our code of conduct. I mean, to me, children in the library, this is something where, you know, if somebody does this, they should be ejected immediately or for long term if they're a repeat offender. Is that something that's possible, or is there some legal reason?
No, that's certainly possible. And I was pulling up our standards of behavior, but I didn't quite get to it.
Okay.
I believe it does already fall under standards of behavior.
Okay.
But the question is, where we get in a sticky situation is what is pornography versus what is art, which is an issue that governments are often faced with. So that's just something we would keep in mind, and we wrote the standards of behavior with that in mind. But a general action that is prohibited is disturbing others' uses of our facilities, and certainly pornography could do that.
Okay, thank you.
And we have excluded repeat offenders for this, using the standards of behaviors for either 45 days for a first offense, or if they come back and do it again, a 90-day exclusion. But that's kind of what we have available to do.
Mayor Pro Tem.
As I evaluate Plan 2 versus Plan 3, there's a significant difference in cost, and the item that we are losing, if I heard you correctly, would be an ability to work through our historic archives. And this brings me to my question, which is use of volunteer services in the library. Does the library currently use volunteers or coordinate volunteers to serve in the library? And is that something that if we were to adopt, say, Plan 3, with a supplemental volunteer coordinator or something along the lines, we could leverage some of the city's existing assets for free and still get done what we would get done if we spent $108,000 more on Plan 2?
I think that's definitely a feasible way to look at it, because we currently have right now just 2 volunteers that only come in to do very minimal tasks. Kind of testament to our plans is that we haven't been able to reinvigorate our volunteer program because we don't have staff time to make a plan for what would they do, how would we train volunteers, how do we recruit them, how do we keep track of how many we have, how do we schedule them. There's so much work that goes into a quality volunteer program that we need to be able to give ourselves that time to put one into place. So I think a plan that we get some additional staff, and it would allow the library supervisors to have 40% of their time spent on planning, would allow us to create a quality volunteer program where we could work with, like, the Englewood Historic Preservation Society, with any volunteers they might have to help us with the archive and the historical collection. But certainly we would need to be able to give ourselves that time to create the volunteer program to be able to go that route.
Thank you. Are we ready for comments?
Actually, I have a couple of questions, if you don't mind, and then we can get to comments or next steps here. Ms. Lafferty, so just a couple questions. I'll first ask questions regarding the security and then the limiting of the services posed by the staffing issues. So you mentioned that the north entrance can potentially be, we wouldn't use that entrance for short-term fix. What would patrons be doing in order to get to the south entrance? Would they climb the stairs? And if they were to climb the stairs, are those blocked off at a certain point because of cleaning? Or will we ask them to go around the building to the south entrance?
Yeah, I guess during regular business hours for the city, they could certainly go up and down, or they would have to walk around the side of the building where the artwork is outside to get to the south entrance. There has been discussion with Public Works about cutting off access to the second floor after normal business hours, because the library does stay open until 7:30. We do encounter people who come up to the second floor that we can't keep an eye on, that cause some problems. So there has been talk about closing that down, so that would prohibit that type of access after normal business hours to get into the library. So really if they drove into the circle and parked out there, if that access up and over to the second floor and down was closed, they would have to walk around outside.
Okay. And Ms. Lafferty, remind me, are we using allied security at all during the week, or are there times that they are present versus not present?
So the library employs an in-house security specialist full-time, and then we have a part-time security associate in the library. The contract security with Allied Universal is for a 24/7 exterior guard, and then inside the Civic Center, Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 4 p.m.
Okay, so those are during weekdays then?
Yes.
Okay. And then in terms of limiting the services, have we seen any impact to obviously you're canceling the book clubs on occasion, the workshops. Have we seen enrollment drop over the past few years or anything like that regarding just those additional services?
You know, it's really hard to say because a lot of program attendance and summer reading participation kind of dropped significantly because of COVID. So that was kind of the main reason why numbers would have been reduced. And as we saw participation increasing during 2022, as there was less restrictions and more people were coming back out, we certainly saw an increase in people registering for new library accounts that hadn't been here since pre-COVID. So we've seen people coming to the library to use us for resources for, books or physical books or our downloadable materials using the computers. But we really haven't had a significant increase in program attendance. I think the children's programming has maintained its number of programs and the attendance it's had, but the adult programming has really kind of fallen off. We don't have a lot of outside organizations doing any presentations or talks or anything like that because we just don't have the time to facilitate that planning.
Thank you, Ms. Lafferty. And I guess I'll ask a question just because we have to ask the question about the budget. For the city manager, in terms of funding this moving forward for 2023, since we're now in 23, and moving forward, have you given any thought in terms of how we would be doing that for the remainder of the year?
We have talked about that quite a bit, Mayor. In discussions today with the Finance Department, we are looking at the Parks, Recreation, Library budget in terms of what is unspent from last year and carrying over. Right now, that number without final invoices, et cetera, is about 800,000. And so we know that we'll have some more invoices coming in to end that out, but most of that savings is in non-personnel. So we need to kind of look at and see what wasn't spent. So there may be some opportunities there. Certainly, as we've gone through the end of the year, you passed the budget in October. As we've gone through the end of the year, we've continued to exceed our projections in terms of sales and use tax. We were projecting a much slower growth in 2023. It doesn't look like the slowdown that we had anticipated, is coming anytime soon. That's certainly not a guarantee. So we think that there are some ways of funding this. What we have to keep in mind is that, every department and division in the city could be here asking the same thing. There were over 15 positions that were requested in the 2023 budget. We didn't fund any of them because we were really trying to focus on getting our salary, our compensation and classification system build done. We were able to do that, but it was really at the expense of funding some of these. In addition, I know Beth and her team and Christina have worked well with HR and finance as they've worked through this. But really, the first time that staff got a chance to look at this was when it was presented to the library board a month before last, I think it was, when we realized kind of the scope of the issue, comparison cities, what they're looking at. Because you may remember we had an interim city manager who was the former director of the library, and this was, we had a different library at that time. I think we had different security situations. As Member Noonenkamp said, we were less so the front line of the city's response to homelessness. So conditions have changed, and we need to look at that. I really applaud the staff for bringing this forward, but we do need a little bit of time to vet, all of those costs and benefits. The one thing we have talked about for quite a while is turning more of those part-time positions into full-time positions. Our office fully supports that, and just making sure that we're doing the cost-benefit analysis between adding additional versus incremental cost additions that would allow some of our part-time staff to go full-time. So I think that there are many ways to get to where council wants to go if there is consensus among council to increase the budget to address some of these needs, and we're ready and willing to start that process.
Thank you very much, City Manager. Members of council, in terms of giving direction tonight, can we not use the spreadsheet and just stick to Plan 2, Plan 3, and Plan 4, so kind of consistent and not provide any confusion? So if you are going to remark on which plan you prefer this, let's try to use that instead of the spreadsheet. So, Member Noonenkamp, I'll let you start us off.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say I'm tremendously proud of our staff in the library and the challenges that they have faced over the last several years, not just this last year, and the really thoughtful work of our library board. I know many of you received communication from them. They've been a big part of this conversation. And I know that this council all shares the belief that it is essential that our staff feel safe doing their jobs, working for our city. And they do not currently. And as the city manager alluded, libraries have changed. The services that they provide in our community are no longer just lending books. And unfortunately, our funding of our library has not stayed in the same pace of that change, and we've not kept up. And you may have heard, as I've continued to give readouts from my meetings with the Public Library Board, this issue of part-time staff turnover has consistently been something that I've brought to this council as a concern that I have, and it's created a volatility for our staff that I think is really unnecessary. I'm really committed to keeping our library open 7 days a week and not only providing minimum services, but really excellent services, because libraries are one of the only places where we're providing fully free services to our community, which is incredibly equitable and one of the only places where we really can serve everyone equally, which I think is really important. So I would like to see us move forward. My preference would be Plan 2, the $337,000 plan. I would also support Plan 3 if that's as far as we can get, but my desire for us to look really closely at Plan 2 is that full-time versus part-time difference. I think that's going to make a very big difference for our community.
Thank you, Member Noonan-Camp. Mayor Pro Tem.
I can't disagree with anything that Councilwoman Noonan-Camp just said. That being said, I am supportive as an interim immediate step in a budget supplemental of Plan 3. One of the things that I think would also help inform decision-making going forward, particularly in regards to security, is a call sheet, calls for service at the library from the police department to see how often we're dealing with issues that involve the police department at the library as well. And I just want to emphasize every staff member deserves to work in a safe environment. And I appreciate hearing those safety concerns tonight, because the library is a critical service. I too would like to see it open 7 days a week. I have wanted to use the library on a Sunday. I work remotely from home or wherever I want to go, and the library is one of the places where I work sometimes. Yeah, I think Plan 3 solves a lot of the issues that we are working with right now, and will help us evaluate the needs in the future without committing too much money, or money that we potentially would have to sweep back in the future as well.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Member Woodward, and then Member Anderson.
I am in strong support of Plan 2, and if we couldn't do that, Plan 3. And I too am in agreement with Member Noonan-Camp regarding the full-time employees. I mean, I think it's pretty evident that full-time employees, almost in any type of business, are going to be more long-term and more reliable than part-time employees. Historically, Englewood has, been known for its library, people coming in from both ways on light rail and able to utilize Englewood Library on a Sunday where they can't in other places. So, I think there's just some real strong things that I believe 7-day-a-week library service in Englewood is a real plus. So, and to increase programming, I'm in total support of that. I know there was something on one of the morning shows on a Sunday regarding, I think it was New York library that had opened with all this great art stuff and all these things, and they were almost having to turn away people. There's just so many people coming to their libraries. So I'm in support of Plan 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Woodward. Member Anderson.
I'm potentially supportive of Plan 2 in the long run. I'm interested to see what happens if we go with Plan 3 and then see what's necessary to expand from there. I don't think there's anything wrong with kind of taking it incrementally. If this gets us to Plan 3 gets us to am I using that right? Plan 3, yes. Making sure I'm not looking at the spreadsheet. Making sure that we have a place that's safe, and see what we can get done with that amount of staff support, and then reevaluating when we're within the budget cycle to say, okay, how is this working, and what do we need for 2024 to see if we can fill in some of those gaps.
Thank you, Member Anderson. Member Russell.
Thank you. And I agree with my fellow council members. There are actually two things going on here. And until we address the safety and security issue, all the staff you get aren't gonna help. The safety and security has to be addressed. And so what I would like to suggest to city council is that we have an employee that has a temporary office over in the county building. I think that Mike Sangren ought to come over and set his office up in the library for a while and see what the issues are that are going on, and if he can come up with a solution. He's already being paid hundreds of thousands of dollars, so I think that's one thing that we could do. I am concerned, like Mayor Pro Tem, with staffing this fully. I'm not saying that we don't need it and you can't use it, but if we only have one-time funds and we're hiring employees, then do we have to let them go a year from now? And so I would rather start slower and move up, but if we do not address the security issue, a lot of it is a moot point, in my opinion. So I would support Plan 3 to begin with, but I also believe that it would behoove us to contact Mike Sangren to see if he would come over here and sit down there for a while and see if he can help figure out a solution to this problem. Thank you.
Member Wink?
Thank you, Mayor. Given we can have 7 days of service, even though the weekends are a bit abbreviated, along with an increase to the staffing and some improvement to the security challenges and other concerns. I mean, we want to build our civic engagement, right, overall, and enrich the community. There is an objective here to having a public library that's thriving. I think, especially with trying out this alternate entry system and all of what's been presented here, I at least want 7 days, and so I'm glad for that. I definitely want to see some improvements in security. I know that we have a new security team that's vastly improved for us. I think Plan 3 would be a good place to start. It provides us with that, but I don't think this is, as my fellow council members have said, I don't think this is the end of the conversation, right? Nor should it feel like another ask for us to continue later. Just, I know how it might feel, or I believe I know how it might feel to keep coming, but as long as we can keep it an active conversation, let's start there, in my opinion.
Thank you, Member Wink. Mayor Pro Tem?
Just wanted to note for my colleagues who might be teetering between Plan 2 and Plan 3, one of the advantages of Plan 3 is that it leaves us with $107,000 to make physical improvements, which we would have otherwise allocated towards staff. So if we compare the cost, Plan 3 in the first year spent $229,000, and if we would have spent that on Plan 2, we could still spend that amount of money, but also accomplish the physical security improvements.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I think we have consensus, at least tonight, to move forward with at least Plan 3. I haven't voiced my suggestion here, but I agree with Member Anderson where he did state that I do want to see us at some point move to Plan 2 and have a fully staffed full-time or full-time library staff there in the future, but work through that during the budget cycle. But I agree with most of everything that was said by members of council here tonight. I understand the point by Member Russell of having Mr. Sangren sit in the library, but he is being paid by 3 different cities. I'm not sure if that's actually, he wouldn't be able to just work within Englewood. He's got to be looking at the larger causes of the homelessness issue and not just the single point for the Englewood Library. But do appreciate all the work he's done, and I'm sure that he is present in the library from time to time as well. But I think we are giving enough direction for staff tonight. And Member Russell, did you want to?
I just want to respond to that. And number one, when we had our Tri-Cities meeting, not Sheridan or Littleton are having the problems that we have. Our library is located on the light rail. The crime rate in this area is far higher than any other area. And I actually believe that we hired him to do this job, and I'm not saying that he has to stay here forever, but I think that he probably should come down here and spend at least a few hours, a couple days a week, to see if he can help us, because he has the resources besides just Englewood. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, thank you very much, Ms. Lafferty, Ms. Watson, for the presentation tonight. Thank you very much for the support of the board, the library board as well, for coming here tonight, and hoping that we can improve the situation here in the near future. But thank you very much. Thank you. All right, everyone, we are at the top of the hour. Did we need a short break, or did we want to move? We're going to take a 5-minute break if that's okay, and then we would start this back up at 7:05. Thank you. Members of council, if you could be seated. Members of council, Member Woodward specifically, if you, no, I'm joking.
That's the first time I've been late this year.
Thank you, everyone. I now call this meeting to order. If you're able to do so, if you could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. City Clerk, if you could take roll call.
Yes, good evening. Member Anderson,
Present?
Member Noonenkamp,
Present.
Member Russell,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward,
Present.
Member Wink,
Present.
Member Woodward,
Present.
Mayor Sierra.
Present.
All seven present.
Thank you. Minutes from the regular city council meeting of December 12th. Do we have any changes? Seeing none, can I get a motion to?
Excuse me.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Member Russell.
I just have a question on 9A2. It, 9A2 was removed, but there's not an independent vote. It says this agenda item was removed from the consent agenda and considered independently, but it probably passed. So was it included in the vote with all of the rest of them?
No, I think it probably should have had a separate vote on that, so we can correct that.
Okay, thank you. And then there's one other, on general discussion under Mayor's Choice, the executive session. That was tabled, I thought, to the next meeting, is that correct? We tabled it. So the next meeting is tonight. I don't see it on the agenda.
Let's see, which number was that one again?
It's item 12A under Mayor's Choice.
Actually, hold on, let me see here. No, so that one is, we tabled it, but I don't think that we had a date decided on that, so it wasn't gonna be in January. It doesn't sound like it's gonna be in the near future, maybe. There was several reasons for that change, but City Manager, did you wanna voice in on that?
Yes, just wanted to, what you said is correct, and the Director of Utilities did remind me that that item is no longer pressing like it was at one point. So we do have some time, and we are doing some analysis behind the scenes. I believe he wants to spend a little more time with the Water Board as well on that before it comes to council.
Thank you, City Manager Lewis.
So my question just is, what do we do with it? Because we tabled it. That's my question.
Mayor?
Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
I think the minutes are actually correct in that it was canceled and not tabled. I don't recall, it's been several weeks, but I don't recall a vote to table that item. I don't believe it was ever introduced.
That is correct, Mayor Pro Tem.
So the terminology on the agenda of, or on the minutes of canceled is actually correct.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
But to your earlier point, Member Russell, City Clerk, will we make the change? It does look like we have it for second reading. That first item that Member Russell provided.
And just remind me of the agenda item, is it 9A2? Okay, we can make that correction.
Perfect. Any other changes to the agenda or to the minutes? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve as amended?
I move to approve the minutes from December 12th, 2022 as amended.
Thank you, Member Russell. Could I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Can we please vote?
Member Anderson,
Aye.
Member Noonenkamp,
Aye.
Member Russell,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward,
Aye.
Member Wink,
Aye.
Member Woodward,
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 7 ayes.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 6, recognition of the holiday decorating contest winners. Give us a second here. And I believe we're going to have a little bit of recognition here tonight, so good evening.
Good evening, Council. Thank you for the opportunity to recognize the winners of the annual Holiday Decorating Contest. The Holiday Decorating Contest has been going on for many years within the city of Englewood. I would like to thank the Sustainability Commission for judging this year's entries. Now let's recognize the winners. When I call your name, you will receive your certificate and you will get a photo with Mayor Sierra. The Best House Award is presented to Kevin and Ashley Wynn. The Wynn's home featured a dazzling display of LED Christmas trees along with other festive pieces, including a snowman and reindeer. The Best Business Award is presented to Brian Hart from Frame to Art. Frame to Art has been a staple in the community for more than 30 years. Their festive and inclusive display stands out along South Broadway. Brian was devastated that he could not be here tonight, but he is spending some final hours with his family. So we want to give Brian a big thank you for his great display. The Best Neighborhood and Block Award is presented to Alice Spencer and Amber Rise for the 3100 block of South Fox Street in Cushing Park neighborhood. Six homes participated to help win the award for the block. Here's another shot of the best block. The new Legacy Award goes to Ron and Melanie Cowler. Their display is an accumulation of things they have gotten over the past 25 plus years. It has gotten so big that when they want to add something new, they have to take something away. They enjoy seeing the joy their display gives to so many people around Englewood and beyond. Congratulations to all of our winners.
Congratulations again to all the winners and for making the holiday season a little bit more festive. So thank you very much for that. Moving on to recognition of scheduled public comment. The deadline to sign up to speak for scheduled public comment is Wednesday by 5 p.m. prior to the meeting through the city clerk's office. This is an opportunity for the public to address city council. There's an expectation that the presentation will be conducted in a respectful manner. And council may ask questions for clarification, but there will not be any dialogue, and please limit your presentation to 5 minutes. Up first is Bruce Arrant, here to present council about the municipal ordinance. And is Mr. Arrant here tonight? Is he online? Okay. Don't see Mr. Arrant, so we will go ahead and move on to unscheduled public comments. Same rules apply, but you are limited to 3 minutes. Do we have anyone signed up for unscheduled public comment tonight, City Clerk? And tonight, Member Russell will be giving the response to unscheduled public comment. All right. Up first is Mr. Jerry Walker here to discuss a false report. Good evening, Mr. Walker. If you could just state your name and your address or cross streets.
Jerry Walker, 4180 South Pearl Street. Good evening, Mayor, City Council. I ran across this bill, a bill for an ordinance amending section, and I don't know if it's something that we have, that you have done, or if this is something you are thinking about doing. Maybe you could enlighten me about that. Is everything in this particular bill already done, or is this what you're contemplating or want to pass, or what? Anybody?
What item?
Mr. Walker, continue with, is there anything that you want to address specifically tonight?
Oh, I do. Page 5, 7-6B-10, false reports and alarms. If you would like to change that, instead of saying no person shall, I wish you would put in there no person or no police officer shall give any fake reports or false reports, because I was arrested and handcuffed in this building for having a wrench in my back pocket, and after about 45 minutes of the police talking to the city manager, not the city manager, but the city lawyer, they came up with a charge that was so false it was unbelievable, because supposedly I had totally disrupted city council for a period of time, and yet no one in city council knew it happened. So, and the district attorney in Arapahoe County laughed at it and dismissed it. So we'd like you to make sure that when we give in false reports that we also, not just the citizens, but the people who also work here and the police department. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walker, for your time tonight. Any questions for members of council? Actually, Mr. Walker, I just have a question. Were you referring to Council Bill 03, so 982?
I'm sorry?
Is it Council Bill 03, amending Public Offense Code to mirror changes in state law and ensure compliance? Is that the motion you're speaking up to tonight, the ordinance?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Walker. Seeing no further comments, thank you very much for your time tonight, Mr. Walker. Moving on to the second speaker is Ms. Kathleen Bailey. Here, no topic given, I guess I should say. Good evening, Ms. Bailey. If you could state your name and your address or cross streets.
Kathleen Bailey, Jason and Union. The library is such an integral part of our city, such a foundational, well-loved part. I think it's outrageous that it's been allowed to deteriorate to this point. And librarians are frugal professionals, and anything that they are asking for is reasonable, not over the top. And I'm really surprised and disappointed you guys didn't choose number 2. And I don't understand what the existence of the DDA and the 70 million that it has is going to be used for when the Englewood Public Library is such an important downtown development thing. Important entity. But I am here tonight to publicly announce to all interested citizens in earshot that per a December 29, 2022 posting on the City Manager City Council newsletter, a workshop with City Council and the EDA Board will be held on Saturday, February 11th, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. in the community room to discuss the City Center redevelopment. The workshop will be a hybrid to allow members to attend virtually if necessary. Tamara Niles. After sending a strong email complaint for the apparent exclusion of citizens and citizen oversight and planning and the planning of development of our city center property, I was assured by Director Power that the public meeting and community members can attend, that it was a public meeting and community members can attend. Yet as of yesterday, January 2nd, 23, this meeting was not even posted on the city's meeting portal under upcoming meetings. So in another email I sent yesterday, I asked the city to correct their error and post the 2011-23 meeting on the city's meeting portal under upcoming meetings, so that citizens would have time to plan to attend an all-day workshop on Saturday, February 11th, 2023. Today, the city did add the 2/11/2023 meeting to the public list of upcoming meetings, but is identified as a February 11, 2023 City Council workshop. So to provide critical clarity for any citizens in earshot who does not want to be left out yet again of planning the future development and use of the citizen-owned city center public property, I want to again publicly announce that a workshop with City Council and an EDA board will be held on Saturday, February 11th, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. in the community room to discuss the city center development. The workshop will be hybrid to allow members to attend virtually if necessary, per Tamara Niles. And per Director Power, citizens can attend in person or virtually. So I hope I will be seeing a number of other citizens on that day so that they can oversee what the city is doing and communicate with their city council members. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. Any comments from members of council? Seeing none, thank you for coming tonight, Ms. Bailey. Up next is Daniel Reed, I believe. Daniel Reed or Daniel Red, I'm not sure. Daniel Reed. Good evening, Mr. Reed. If you could just state your name and your address or cross streets.
Yep, Daniel Reed, 4200 South Lopan.
Go ahead, sir.
Great. Good evening, council, mayor. Last time I came here, I discussed a little bit about the challenges that we'd had in terms of engaging city and specifically community development in the process of kind of organizing resistance, as it were, should be transparent around the PUD. I want to bookend that conversation because I know there's a vote coming up, and I'll be discussing the process and the process only in these brief comments. What I'd really like to understand from this committee, or excuse me, from City Council here, is what are the strategies for kind of elevating neighbor voice in the PUD approval meeting that will be coming up in the next few weeks? I'm not sure exactly what the date is. And the reason I'm asking is because last time we had to wait nearly 3.5 hours to provide public comment on an important issue. As you know, we're a community made of working class people. I cannot afford to spend 3 hours of my evening waiting for public comment to happen. And I also know that many of my neighbors cannot do that. I just wonder if we can kind of come to some kind of understanding of how public comment will be addressed and managed in the upcoming PUD meeting in front of this council. I know that's a question, and perhaps you don't want to answer that question now, but that is a question that's surfacing amongst neighbors. So if I could get some clarity or at least acknowledgement of the concern that we're bringing at this moment, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reed. Are you anything else you want to add tonight? Just answering the question that you asked. Okay,
that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. Thank you very much for your time tonight. Any questions, Member Wink?
Thanks, Mayor. Thank you for coming, Mr. Reed.
Yep, thank you.
Are you referring to the 3.5 hours that you had to wait before you could speak? Are you referring to the speaking during the public hearing section of a regular meeting? Was that it?
It was the public comment in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions from council? Member Nunekamp.
Thank you. Just a point of clarification, because I did actually look into this last time you were here, because this is an important issue that we're prioritizing citizen voice. I believe that there were several members of the public who were there that night, around 40. Were you waiting because other members were also speaking, or was that how long it took for this public comment to start?
Yeah, both. The answer is there were many people who wanted to give public comment. It did take about 3.5 hours to get to the first opportunity to provide public comment on the PUD.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Seeing none, Mr. Red, thank you very much for your time tonight. Perfect. And I will pass it over to Member Russell to provide a response.
Thank you, Mayor, and I want to thank each of you for coming this evening. Thanks to Jerry Walker, and I do think that he did bring up a great report or a great comment about the ordinance, and so I think that's something that we should keep in mind when we're discussing that tonight. It will be pulled from the consent agenda item. And Ms. Bailey, thank you so much for keeping on top of this. You are very diligent in making sure that council and staff keeps on top of things, and really, it is our desire that the public will come out, and it is especially my desire, that the public would come out and weigh in. Now, they won't be able to weigh in at the meeting because it's a study session type of meeting, but at least they will be informed it is really important for the public to be informed because we're your servants. And so I greatly appreciate that. Thank you very much. And Mr. Reed, I also thank you for coming out. I'm wondering, whether city manager or city attorney, if you kind of have information about how that process works. I know it's under item 10 generally in the agenda, right?
Actually, Member Russell, if you don't mind, I can take a stab at it, and then I can see if City Manager Lewis or City Attorney or any members of council want to correct me on the meeting on the 18th, which is going to be the Tuesday for the public hearing on the PUD. So that night, we have cleared the schedule. There's going to be no study session that night. The only agenda item that night is going to be the public hearing, just because we do expect a lot of turnout from the community. Obviously, we're still going to have the call to order, Pledge of Allegiance, roll call. All of that's still going to happen, but then we're going to move into the PUD. Once, during the PUD process, the developer is going to come in and he's going to give his presentation. I don't think that we set a time limit on how long that presentation occurs. We then ask questions of the developer, and then we open it up to comments from the public. So we are starting at 6 o'clock that night. Again, I think most of those developer presentations occur for about an hour, and then we ask questions, which could take another hour, but then we open up to members of the public. So I do understand some of the concerns that Mr. Reed that you're raising, but that is going to be the process that we're planning on following that night. I'm not sure if members of council see this differently, or if city attorney, if I have any of those facts incorrect. But I do believe that that's the process we usually handle for each PUD.
I would just like to add that under Municipal Code Section 1-10-2-7, subsection B, it provides the order of procedure for quasi-judicial hearings when you do receive evidence. It provides that first you receive the staff presentation, followed then by the applicant's presentation. Then public comment is after that. First, anyone in support, followed by anyone against. Then the applicant has a chance to respond after public comment is over. So that's laid out in our code.
Thank you very much, City Attorney Niles. And I guess the other thing that I do want to mention is that there will be no vote that night, that we actually don't vote until the following city council meeting, which would be the first meeting in February. So I hope that provides a little bit of clarity, Mr. Reed, but just wanted to point that viewpoint. And Member Anderson, you have a comment?
Yeah, I had a question. Are people allowed to attend and speak virtually on that subject? So if they wanted to, if they weren't able to make it for the whole meeting, stay at home, keep an eye on YouTube, and jump on to the call and make public comment at the hearing?
So typically what we do, I can answer this,
Okay.
is so people can, if they think they want to join virtually, they would register to get the link.
Okay.
And then during public testimony, we would call on them because that link would be sent, and then we would allow them. So we do need to, as long as people kind of click that register link, it'll get them the appropriate link so they can actually join the meeting versus just watching it on the YouTube channel.
Okay, so they would be in the Zoom call or whatever?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Very good. Good. Yeah, I'm glad we have that option, because I'm sensitive to that concern. I have kids and neighbors and everything like that, and know that life gets busy, so being able to attend virtually is a good option there as well.
Member Russell, go ahead.
Thank you. I just would like to share one other thing. Even though council does not vote on it that night, council cannot take any outside comments from the public or discuss it with anyone because it's a quasi judicial hearing. But thank you very much for coming forward to find out more information.
Thank you very much, Member Russell. Mayor Pro Tem.
I think this is a good discussion for us to have. I'm not sure if now is the appropriate time for us to have this discussion, but I do have a couple of things to add. Mayor?
If it's a response to Mr. Reed,
It is.
This will be a good time, but I'd like to have a deeper discussion during council members' choice at the end
Okay.
of the evening. But go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
So first, in regards to virtual participation, if we could get the meeting notice out early, with instructions for that virtual participation, I think that would be helpful for members of the public who do wish to participate from home. Secondly, am I correct that members of the public are entitled to submit written comment to be added to the hearing record, which might be an option available to people if they choose not to wait to speak during a lengthy public hearing?
Yes, there's nothing in our code that prohibits that. And in fact, the written comment that council received at a prior council meeting during public comment, today I asked that it be included in the written record because it was evidence and comment presented to the entire council.
Perfect, thank you.
Anyone else from council? Seeing none, that now concludes unscheduled public comment. We are now moving on to agenda item 9, consent agenda items. There was a request to remove 9A1 and 9A2 from consent agenda. Any other changes? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve 9B1 through 5 and 9C1 and 2?
So moved.
Thank you, Member Noonan-Kemp. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Woodward. Can we please vote?
Member Anderson,
Aye.
Member Noonan-Kemp,
Aye.
Member Russell,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward,
Aye.
Member Wink,
Aye.
Member Woodward,
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 7 ayes.
Thank you. And Member Russell, Council Bill 1, amending in Englewood Municipal Code sections regarding quarterly billing cycles for utility billings. Do you have a question for our city attorney, Niles?
Yes, I do. And actually, I did get a response to the one question that I put down, but I had a couple other ones. And I shared those with her. I asked, according to Tabor law, what is the definition of a fee and what can the city charge? So if you could kind of give us an overview of that.
Sure. So there is analysis that's been provided by case law regarding what is a fee under city code versus what is a tax. Of course, a tax under Tabor applies to all citizens and it funds general operations and it must be approved by the voters versus a fee compensates the city for services provided. So in implementing a fee, the city council can adopt an ordinance that creates the fee that applies to the person using the service. In addition, we can also include a penalty within municipal code. And so throughout municipal code, we have sections where if someone fails to comply, fails to get a license as required, for example, then they pay double the normal fee. In that case, it's not simply a fee to reimburse the city, but it's a penalty in response to violation of municipal code. So the provisions of the council bill in front of you regarding the billing cycles does provide for some fees to reimburse the city for things that we do on behalf of people that receive our services. And there are fees proposed that we have calculated to reimburse the city for those costs. And then it also provides some provisions for double that amount, such as double the city's incurred costs if a property owner fails to properly cap a water line like they're supposed to. If the city has to go do it, then you pay our fee to reimburse us, but then you pay double that as the penalty as well for not complying with the municipal code requirements.
So, thank you. And the reason I asked that question is, like, the first one is on page 1 of the bill, 12-1A-4, and it says, no person shall damage, deface, or tamper with any meter. Customers in violation shall pay the city a tampering fee plus double the city's cost and labor to repair and or replace the meter and double the cost of water that would have been payable for a lawful use of water. But so, and you did kind of explain, but how is double the city's cost? I mean, a fee is just, we aren't able to make money on this, correct? We can only recover city cost.
For a fee, yes. If we are imposing a fee for a service provided to someone, for example, if they come in and they sign up for water service, we charge them the fee for the water service. But if someone steals our water, breaks our meters, steals our water, we're no longer looking at a fee to reimburse our costs. Yes, we need to reimburse our costs, but we also are imposing a penalty for violation of our code, both to discourage the conduct and then also to reimburse us for those extra costs where we had to go out and discover it. We had to order all the parts. Somebody had to dispatch the people to do it. We had to have accounting. We had to calculate it. Then we had to bill it, and then we had to recover it. So both the goal is to serve as a deterrent for that wrongful conduct, and then to also reimburse us for costs that we don't normally bill, that we just consider it's our general overhead, but in this case, there are additional costs rather than just the staff time that have gone out to fix the meter and our out-of-pocket costs for the meter.
Thank you. And then I just have one more question. And on page 11, where it gives the fee schedule for those 4 different things, are those new fees or have they been in existence already?
This has been in development for quite some time since we first discussed billing cycles in municipal code. So it's going to take me a minute. I believe those are all new fees, but
Okay.
let me double check.
And so if it's a new fee, that begs the question, shouldn't this have come up during the budgeting cycle and the budget discussions?
They could have, yes. However, this wasn't complete yet, so we weren't able to bring it up yet.
Okay.
If this should create additional unexpected revenue, I'm sure there are places that need additional funding, such as the library that we heard tonight. So ideally, yes, we would have it included, but because it's a new fee, we weren't able to present it yet during the budgeting cycle for 2023.
Okay, I appreciate that. And we don't really have any idea at this point what kind of revenue that's going to generate for the city, really, correct?
No, and hopefully people do what they're supposed to do so that it doesn't generate additional revenue. Hopefully the threat of having to pay, for example, a meter tampering fee would encourage someone not to illegally tamper with our meters. That's an ideal world, but if someone does, then we do have additional tools in our pocket.
Okay, thank you very much.
Member Woodward.
I have a question on page 11 again, and right up at the top, 121A-5B, unauthorized water use fee, $300. Shouldn't that be in addition to the cost of the water?
I'm scrolling up to that new section.
And what comes to mind here with that is what happened in Aurora last week, again, where they were, somebody's out there opening up fire hydrants and opening them up, almost completely full blast, and then leaving and letting that water go, which screws up the pressure. It loses water, lots of water real quick, and it actually breaks some of the stuff, the materials for those lines.
Yes, and as written, the proposed ordinance responds to all of those concerns. It imposes the unauthorized use fee to penalize the behavior of turning on the meter when you are prohibited from doing so, plus double the city's costs and labor to repair the damage, and double the cost of water that would have been payable if it was a lawful use.
Great.
So it reimburses our costs, penalty to discourage behavior. So it's a fee and a penalty.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions from members of council? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve 9A1?
I move to approve 9A1.
Thank you, Member Russell. Could I get a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Member Woodward. Any further comments? Can we please vote?
Member Anderson,
Aye.
Member Noonan-Camp,
Aye.
Member Russell,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward,
Aye.
Member Wink, Member Woodward,
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 7 ayes.
Thank you. Moving on to Council Bill 3. Member Russell, you also had a question for City Attorney Niles on this item.
Yes, well, I did ask, and I know you sent this, but I haven't had time to look at it, and it's probably pretty lengthy, correct? I asked if it would be possible for council to be provided a copy of the revised statutes that have precipitated these changes. And so this is a general question over the whole thing. I do have some specific questions. But how do these changes affect the constitutional rights of our citizens? There are some things in here that I'm very concerned that do affect the constitutional rights of our citizens.
Yes, we actually attempted to revise our current public offense code and code applying to municipal court to actually increase the constitutional protection for people in municipal court. Specifically regarding our contempt proceeding, we have mirrored state law on the contempt proceeding, especially regarding contempt that occurs out of court. And what I mean by that is when the judge orders somebody to do something, and then they don't do it outside of court. Then how do we respond to that? So we have mirrored state law, which is a procedure we know is legal, and provided a clear framework to establish that a violation was committed and requiring the person to come back to court to answer to that instead of just facing the possibility of a bench warrant. Instead, we're requiring my office through the city prosecutor to memorialize the purported violation in affidavit, present that to the court, schedule a hearing, and then only if the person doesn't appear or if the judge is convinced that the contempt did occur out of court, at that time the judge would issue a bench warrant. So it's our goal to provide more due process to protect the constitutional rights of people. The rest of the revisions were to bring our municipal code in alignment with state law. For example, we cannot prosecute felonies in municipal court. It's prohibited under state law. However, as certain offenses have been reclassified to felonies, we didn't update our code every year to reflect that. So there are certain offenses that we've taken out because we just can't prosecute those in municipal court anymore. We also did quite a bit of just revising the language, where we could replace 1 or 2 sentences with 4 words, for example. So you will see a lot of crossing out to make it shorter, but it doesn't change the substantive effect. I think that's probably more of a long description than a highlight, but I'd welcome your additional questions, Councilmember
Okay,
Russell.
I appreciate that. The next questions that I have are on page 5, and this is actually, I believe, what Mr. Walker was referring to in his sharing. Under B, no person shall knowingly obstruct or interfere or hinder a peace officer, including those persons described. City employee designated by EMC 6-5-1, emergency medical service provider or firefighter in the discharge of his or her duties, but remaining silent or stating verbal opposition to an order does not constitute a violation of this section. Can we define what obstruct, interfere, or hinder means? Are there definitions for those?
We could provide definitions of those in code, but those, what does and does not constitute a violation of those has been pretty thoroughly fleshed out through case law. So we could provide an additional definition of it, but we're not required to because it's already all within applicable law.
Okay, so I guess my concern is, and I have examples from people that have told me this in my tenure on city council. They have said things I will not repeat to city employees that have come either to their personal home or their personal business. And this is not a police officer, but city employees, and they've really cussed them out. And it really is their freedom of speech to say those things. Get off my property. And I do believe that sometimes there are city employees that would take offense to those things. Actually, I know of one instance where a city employee did take offense. It would bug me if somebody said that to me, but it was their right because of what they were told. So, is the burden of proof going to be on the citizen?
No, the burden of proof is always on the city or the city prosecutor to establish guilt beyond a reasonable doubt for violations of the public offense code. So everyone is innocent until proven guilty by the city prosecutor.
And why did it put this in the bottom? But remaining silent or stating verbal opposition to an order does not constitute a violation of this section. Because that is everybody's right. We can either remain silent or we have freedom of speech. So why was that put in here?
Because this was a change to state law to specifically provide that exception. So this section is what led us to recommend a revision. That phrase is what led us to recommend a revision of the entire section. We knew we had to include that because state law says we have to put it in there. And so while we were adding that, I believe in changing municipal code once and doing it right. That's why we took out the extraneous language that's no longer applicable or necessary and shortened the wording.
Okay, thank you. Then my next one, and this was pretty egregious to me. It's on page 6 at the top. It's B, pretend to furnish such authorities with information relating to an offense or incident when the person knows they have no information relating to such offense or incident or knows that the information is false, other than a false report regarding animal cruelty. Why is the exception for this if it is indeed a false report? Why are we accepting that?
Again, you hit on the exact reason why we're recommending a change. That's now an exception under state law, so we were required to amend our code to state that falsely reporting animal cruelty is not a violation of this. I assume that the state made that an exception because they want to encourage people to report animal cruelty and not have to be concerned that someone may argue it was a false report. I don't know for sure, but in my 20 years of experience looking at state law changes, it's usually something like that mandates it. But that's why we are proposing a change. We have to include that.
Okay, I'm not sure that I accept that because lying is never okay. So if a person is reporting cruelty to an animal, they suspect that. It doesn't mean that it's necessarily a false report, but if you knowingly false report anything, it is a false report. Okay, and then let's see, there was a couple others, and some of them go back to the on page 12, the possession, use, or consumption of marijuana is prohibited. How is this making things clearer? I gotta make sure this is where I was. Well, wait a second. Actually, 7(6)D12, possession or use or consumption of marijuana there's two things there. Okay, the only one I really have about marijuana is on the next page, on page 13, where it says growing marijuana shall take place in an enclosed locked space. No person shall cultivate or grow marijuana openly or in the common area of residential property, in an outdoor area or an accessory structure, including but not limited to outdoor gardens, greenhouses, sheds, or storage units within a garage, whether attached or detached, or other structure designed or intended for the keeping or storage of vehicles, equipments, or goods. No person shall permit marijuana plants to be perceptible from exterior of any structure, including but not limited. And then it has all of these things. Are we outlawing the growing of marijuana in residential areas?
No, only openly, publicly, or in the common areas of residential property. And that is, again, to mirror current state law. That's why that's a new recommended provision.
Okay, so I have had some complaints from people that are severely allergic to marijuana, and people have been growing it in the neighborhood, but we can't enforce those codes. So will this make that more enforceable or not necessarily? It won't change anything.
Well, we do have, most of these provisions are already in our municipal code. The only thing that we're proposing to add is the open, public, or in common areas of residential property. It currently requires, our code currently requires, and we propose keeping, that you cannot cultivate or grow it in an accessory structure of a residential property, but instead it has to be in an enclosed lock space. So that's not a new provision in our code. That's what currently is existing.
Okay, I appreciate that. And then the other one is on page 8, and it deals with prostitution, and you've gotten rid of all of the definitions of everything. It's almost like there's very little in here. Are all of those definitions in the Colorado Revised Statutes?
They are.
So how would the public know what without having to go to the revised statutes to figure out what the law is?
Well, we do list the prostitution offenses, and we collectively call them sexual acts. And then we also provide a clear definition along with the statutory reference. And a couple of reasons we did that. Both, it makes our code shorter if we can just refer to those definitions by reference. If those definitions change under state law, we aren't then required to change our code. And our code and the state statute are both available essentially at the same place, which is online. If you just type in CRS 18-7-201 in a search engine, it will come up for free.
So why is it that we have to mirror state law in our ordinances? Is it on all things? How is a home rule city different from state law?
We don't have to always mirror state law, no. We can prohibit certain conduct, the state law doesn't. But if state law, for example, if case law says, no, this application of, let's say the restitution code is illegal, and we have those same provisions in our code, then if a court has said that the application in that way can't be enforced, then we also need to change our code so that it's enforced legally as well. But that's, I'm jumping the gun, restitution is later on in your agenda, but that's why we've proposed one change to restitution. So no, it doesn't always have to be the same, but sometimes it does. Also, if we make our code the same as state law in certain instances, even if we don't have to, it has some benefit because A, it's already been fleshed out. Courts have already decided it's enforceable. There's case law that provide guidance to attorneys and other people are familiar with that area, so they have an idea of how it's enforced, how it's applied, what they can and can't do. And then also being able to refer to state law instead of providing it all separately in our code makes our code shorter. It makes it a definition easy to find because it's freely available online. And then if there is a change to the law, we don't have to change our code. So it's a little bit easier from the administrative perspective. We don't have to separately monitor all these laws and compare them to our codes because we know it's already happening at the state level.
So, and is prostitution can it be addressed in municipal court or no?
Some can, some can't. For example, pimping was prohibited by our code, but it's now a felony, so we can't prosecute it in municipal court, so we take it out of our code because it's not legally enforceable by municipal court anyway. And what that means, it's still illegal, but when our police department arrests someone for it, then it has to be prosecuted in district court as a felony because it can't be prosecuted here. So yes, what we've left in, which is prostitution, it is a misdemeanor and can be prosecuted in municipal courts.
Okay, and so most of this really deals with what we're dealing with in municipal court? I mean, is that part of the reason we got rid of a lot of the stuff on prostitution? Because most of it cannot, if it's a felony, it can't be tried here anyway.
Right. And I used pimping, and I'm sorry, as we have defined it in our code, it has state a misdemeanor. So that was a misstatement. I wanted to make sure I corrected that. But so it all depends on how we define certain actions. Actions that are defined as a felony under state law, we can't enforce it anyway, so it shouldn't be in our code. And I'm sorry, I'm not exactly sure I answered your question.
Okay, yes, I think you did answer my questions. I appreciate that, and so thank you.
Thank you, Member Russell. Member Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor. And Member Russell did ask one of my follow-up questions because I resonate with the concerns about that point on the top of page 6 with regard to falsely reporting animal cruelty. And if I'm to understand this correctly, what Attorney Niles, is under state law, and now if we pass this under our municipal code, it would be illegal for somebody to falsely report somebody to the police for child abuse, but legal for them to falsely report someone to the police for animal abuse.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, that said, this is one of those places where we could change the applicable law because we could also provide an exception for falsely reporting child abuse. And we could specifically say that doesn't violate our municipal code.
Well, I actually like that it's illegal to falsely accuse someone of child abuse. And I think if we're going to go there, we should also make it illegal for someone to falsely report them for animal cruelty. Now, that being said, we can't go change state law, so I understand we're limited here, but I like the idea of keeping our code consistent with state law, as long as I agree with state law. I have a conscience problem if I'm asked to vote on something that, or if if I have the opportunity to vote on something that I disagree with, I can't in good conscience vote on a law that I think is wrong, which in this case, I think it would be wrong to allow someone. I think false accusations are a wrong thing to do and should be criminally wrong. So at least that portion of this, that concern resonates with me, and I don't really want to follow state code. I mean, I'm just one person on council, but I don't want to vote yes on something I actually disagree with. Is that?
Yes, and I do. There are repercussions for falsely reporting animal abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Under state law, it's not a misdemeanor, it's not a felony, but it is called a civil infraction, which is a new lesser offense under state law. And so we don't have jurisdiction to prosecute civil offenses or civil infractions either. Mm-hmm. And so they can still be charged with it, but it's not a crime anymore. And it's a new procedure where there's no attorneys, there's no prosecutor. Essentially, the officer goes to district court. It's more like a small claims proceeding. It's new. I don't know that we have yet to send an officer to a civil infraction proceeding because it's only district court. So the state has been kind of decriminalizing some offenses and reclassifying them as civil infractions. So this one is a civil infraction. So it's not like there's there are some ramifications. You can still
That's good.
be called to court for doing that. It's just
Yeah.
not a misdemeanor. It's not,
Right.
it's not considered a crime.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
The process you just described strikes me as a remarkable waste of time and resources for our police department. But that being said, the law being nuanced as it is, for instance, if we had someone who repeatedly made false reports of animal cruelty, would that particularly be captured potentially under like a harassment statute or something similar where they're purposely manipulating the government in order to bother their neighbor?
It could, yes. It could fall under another offense.
So we could potentially capture this behavior under something other than just false reporting of animal cruelty.
Yes.
If we found something that was so incredibly unfounded and repeated as to be unjustifiable and harmful to the recipient of that, we would have a means of addressing it outside of this.
Yes, exactly. That's a good point.
Thank you.
Member Russell.
What would happen if we remove that phrase from page 6?
About the animal cruelty?
Yes.
We run the risk that an officer might write a citation in municipal court for that offense, even though under state law it's a civil issue, it's not a criminal issue when the court lacks jurisdiction. By providing that exception, we provide clear notice to the defendant, the officers, and the judge that the court does not have jurisdiction over that.
Thank you.
Any further questions from council? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve 9A2?
I move to approve 9A2.
Thank you, Member Wing. Could I get a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Member Woodward. Any further comments? Member Russell.
I cannot support this because I do have a conscience that we don't have the right to give somebody the right to lie. And so I will not be supporting this just for that reason alone. So, thank you.
Thank you, Member Russell. Member Anderson.
I wanted to propose a little background. I want to make a amendment, a motion to amend, yes, but I'll give a little background first. One of the kind of Western history, there's this idea of the doctrine of the lesser magistrate, that it's actually the duty of people under if it was a king, the prince under the king's authority, if the king issues a law that's bad or wicked, that it's a duty of the lesser magistrate to actually not enforce that law, because we all have a conscience to do the right thing before a higher power, before God. And so this is one where I think that it's not just, as long as we find that the laws that have been passed by a higher authority, the state, are good and right, then we should enforce those, and we should pass update our code to match those. But if we find that something has come from the state that is wrong, then I think we have a duty to not put that into our code. And so with that, I want to propose an amendment here to just to remove the section under 7.6b 10 B, or A2B, yeah, 7.6b 10 A2B, and remove the exception for animal cruelty. So I make a motion to amend that section to remove the animal cruelty exception.
Thank you, Member Anderson. Could I get a second on that?
Second.
Thank you, Member Russell. Any questions or any comments from council? Seeing none, can we please vote?
I'm sorry, Mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I do have some questions. I know we're in the weeds on this, but some clarification prior to the vote would be helpful to me. If we do deem false reporting of animal cruelty a municipal offense, prosecutable locally, even though the state has said that it is not, under our home rule authority, we can still prosecute that as a municipal violation.
No, we can't, because it's a civil infraction, and municipal courts by state law do not have jurisdiction over civil infractions. They have to go through district court.
Okay, so you're saying that the state has declared it to be a matter of statewide authority, that the only punishment method for animal cruelty is this civil infraction, quote-unquote, small claims court type thing that you described earlier?
Not for animal cruelty itself. Animal cruelty
False
is very...
reporting of animal cruelty.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes, false reporting of animal cruelty, the state has decided that it is designated as a civil infraction, so that means we don't have jurisdiction over it. Just like if the state decided it was a felony, we wouldn't have jurisdiction over it.
Okay, I think the issue I'm having trouble kind of wrapping my head around is more of a process-related issue then. I mean, we do prosecute some crimes in municipal court that are also classified as state-level crimes. For instance, a domestic violence violation is a local offense as well as a state offense. What is the difference there that I'm not quite understanding?
Well, actually, we don't have jurisdiction over all domestic violence. If it's aggravated, if it's classified as a felony, we don't have jurisdiction. We can't hear it because it's a felony, and those have to go through district court under state law.
Right.
And then there's that below threshold. If it's a civil infraction, which is new, it's a new classification of decriminalized offenses. We also don't have jurisdiction over those in municipal court. So it's a jurisdictional issue for the entire state, what municipal courts can and cannot hear.
I guess my question is there a method that we have to construct a law that would be similar to false reporting of animal cruelty that we could prosecute on a local level under our authority? Or is that an absolute impossibility in any scenario? Specifically, false reporting of animal cruelty. Because I think that's what my fellow council members are having the issue with. And if we can turn this into a municipal offense of some sort, then I think we solved the problem that's before us.
Well, this is CRS, Colorado Revised Statute, Section 18-9-209, subsection 3. A person who knowingly makes a false report of animal cruelty to a local law enforcement agency or to the state commits a civil infraction. We would have to research that more to see if we can perhaps define the offense slightly different. So that then we could take it from the civil infraction and then we could independently classify it as a misdemeanor.
Point of information, was that just state law that you read?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
In that case, I think I'm going to be supportive of this amendment. I would like some further work to be done in that area because I agree with the concern being asserted by my fellow council members.
Member Noonkamp.
I have a question for the city attorney. So earlier, I believe you said that one of the consequences if we don't pass this is that it would create a challenge for officers who might write a citation for this, although it couldn't be prosecuted because we would have something in our code that we don't have jurisdiction over. If we were, let's say, to remove this piece tonight, you would do more research, we would see, is there another way, and maybe end up having to add it in later. Is that possible, or is there any concern in your eyes around delaying just this piece of updating our code?
No. I think a worst case scenario, let's say as somebody cited for this because we didn't provide the exception, a worst case scenario is someone could either be convicted of it when under state law, it's a civil matter essentially, or they would have to hire an attorney to establish the affirmative defense that municipal court did not have jurisdiction over what they purported to do. Now that's a defense attorney's job, and they bring defenses all the time to say under state law, no, this isn't applicable. No, my client shouldn't be found guilty. But it's that person that can't afford a lawyer or didn't request a court-appointed lawyer or wasn't eligible for whatever reason, that they didn't know that was a defense and that they're wrongfully convicted of it when under state law they shouldn't have been. That's who I'm trying to protect.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you. With that being said, while I really hear and agree with my colleagues on what they're trying to accomplish, I can't support the amendment because I don't want to put our law enforcement officers in a place of ambiguity where they're trying to enforce something that then isn't enforceable. I would like to pass this so that we have the clarity and then maybe revisit it to see, do we want to do a municipal, with more research from the city attorney, a municipal ordinance that would maybe make a penalty for false reporting of animal cruelty, because I agree with the principle of what my colleagues are trying to accomplish, but I'm not comfortable right now with the ambiguity that the city attorney is identifying with our code out of step with the state on this.
Member Anderson.
I just want to say the worst case scenario is exactly the thing that I'm comfortable with, because I don't think that this should be a law. And so I'm, I understand the concern for the police officer, but the police officer isn't going to suffer the repercussions. It's the person who's going to suffer the repercussions is the person who falsely accused somebody of animal cruelty and was then convicted of it in municipal court, which is an outcome that I'm okay with, because I think it should be a criminal infraction. So I am, I guess to make it clear, I'm explicitly okay with disagreeing with the state and putting ourselves at odds with the state when the law is disagreeable. And this one, you may find that this one, this is falsely recording of animal cruelty. Well, somebody discovers that this is a loophole to go after a city council member they don't like. I can't, I can falsely accuse them of something, and there are no grounds that the city can go after me on it. I'm not okay with that. Or, I say city council member because that's what we are, but a neighbor who's an annoyance to their neighbor, and they think, wow, I'm sick of this guy, I'm going to falsely accuse him of animal cruelty. That should be treated as a criminal offense, and the state's wrong, and I'm okay with saying that. So that's why I propose the amendment.
Thank you, Member Anderson. Anyone else? Member Woodward?
Yeah, I'm wondering if we can just call out that other than a false report regarding animal cruelty, comma, which shall be defined as a civil infraction, period. So we're just saying it right there.
Which section are you in, Member Woodward?
I'm at the top of page 6B, 1, 2, 3 lines down. Starts with knows that the information is false, comma, other than a false report regarding animal cruelty, and the addition would be which shall be defined as a civil infraction. So we're stating what the state is intending.
I'm not interested in changing my amendment to that, if that's, that would be a valid alternative amendment, I think, if somebody wanted to propose that.
Right. Okay.
So I think at this point, let's vote on the motion to amend, and we'll get to your point here, depending on the vote, Member Woodward. Is there any other questions regarding the motion to amend at this point?
I would just say I like Member Ward's idea of seeing if there's a way that we can deal with this under municipal code. So I would see this amendment as a stopgap, measures for my own sake, in terms of my own conscience. But if we can find a way to do it in a way that is not in violation of state law, I'm totally happy to do that.
Thank you, Member Anderson. Seeing no other comments, can we vote on the motion to amend 76B 10-2B, if I have that correct?
All right, Member Anderson?
Aye.
Member Noonan-Kemp?
Nay.
Member Russell?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward?
Aye.
Member Wink?
Aye.
Member Woodward?
Nay.
Mayor Sierra?
Nay.
Let the record show 4 ayes and 3 nays.
All right. Any other comments? So I think, are we done here, or do we vote again? Yeah, okay, so now we vote on, remind me again, what are we voting on?
CBO 3.
CBO 3, as amended, there we go. Okay. Any further comments? Seeing none, can we please vote?
Member Anderson,
Aye.
Member Noonenkamp,
Aye.
Member Russell,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward,
Aye.
Member Wink,
Aye.
Member Woodward,
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 7 ayes.
Thank you, everyone. That went longer than expected, but thank you for correcting me on that point. So now we're moving on to, there are no public hearing items for tonight. 11A1, it's amending the Englewood Municipal Code regarding restitution to victims of ordinance violations. Here again is City Attorney Tamara Niles.
We actually have Assistant City Attorney Sergio Renteria here tonight to present on this topic.
Hello, Assistant City Attorney Renteria.
How's council doing this evening?
We're doing well. Thanks for hanging in there with us.
Not a problem. So in the city's attorney's office attempts to rewrite code, we analyzed 147 restitution to victims of ordinance violations, and we came up with some changes. Before I proceed, we did get stakeholder information who could not be present. I do have a statement to read. We wanted to clarify the written statement made to council in regards to municipal court administration review. The city provides the proposed legislation to stakeholders, including municipal court, for feedback. Feedback was given and discussed through the court administrator, such as may being amended to shall when appropriate, for the prosecutor's discretion to seek restitution on behalf of victims in our community, as well as removing the court's discretion to detain juveniles found guilty of criminal contempt for up to 48 hours. It is then up to the city attorney to amend any proposal based on this feedback. If any stakeholder has continued concerns about the legislation and submitted to council, they can appear before the council to comment. In this instance, feedback was solicited, received, considered, amended in part, and rejected in part, and this time the court administrator is not attending for further comment on this legislation. Thank you, Kenitha. So I just wanted to read that statement that was provided to us. So, we did analyze EMC 147 for best practices in restitution and applicable Colorado law. The goal of the city attorney's office is always to obtain restitution and justice for all victims of ordinance violations. But in seeking and looking at the code, we did see that there were some provisions that mandated that the city attorney and the court impose certain types of restitution. Okay, thank you. No, you're fine. Okay, so the city attorney's office analyzed the code, and in light of best practices used by state courts and recent changes in applicable Colorado law, specifically case law, we revised the code for all parties involved in the process, including victims, the city attorney's office, and the municipal court. The current code contains certain provisions that mandate that the court impose and essentially act as a collections agency for restitution that is imposed. Further, the current code doesn't provide for any sort of time deadlines on when a restitution order can be issued. That disadvantages defendants who won't have a timely resolution of the case. It disadvantages victims who won't be able to seek other remedies in a reasonable time frame if they so seek that, such as filing suit or taking other avenues to try to get compensated for their loss. The current code as written also doesn't provide any discretion to the city attorney's office, specifically the city prosecutor, in determining whether restitution is reasonable. Discretion is important, and in some cases, particular victims don't cooperate with the restitution process. Current code requires that we kind of input a restitution order at the time of a conviction, but many times victims, bigger businesses, don't cooperate with giving us information that we need so that that order can be processed. The purpose of the amendments were to cut out unnecessary and unused language and to provide clarity for the code, to provide the city prosecutor with discretion so that he can make his decision based on facts and circumstances of each case individually, and also to align with state law. One big change in the code is that it provides the city prosecutor with the discretion to request restitution, and they will decide that on a case-by-case basis given the nature of the case, the amount of loss, and whatever factors they determine would be necessary at that time. Another big change to the code is that to mirror state law and to mirror specifically a statute and case law that analyze that statute, we put in a time frame on when restitution can be requested. That time frame is 91 days. That time frame can be extended if extraordinary circumstance occurs and we request it through the court. But 91 days mirrors the statute and the law, specifically a case that was analyzed in 2021 that said that that 91 days restitution needed to be ordered in that 91-day period. It also provides a time frame for when victims will know for sure that within this 91-day period, their restitution order will be ordered, or circumstances, or they'll need to provide circumstances on why it needs to be extended. It also provides timeframes for a defendant so that he knows, or they know, when it will have to be paid. The amendment also recognizes that an order of restitution issued by the municipal court can be taken as a civil judgment in favor of the victim to a state court. So essentially, they would be able to take an order of restitution issued by the Englewood Municipal Court to a state court and attempt to collect as a civil judgment in that state court. While the municipal court is still going to be responsible for trying to collect the restitution payment while they still have jurisdiction over the particular person who agreed to pay the restitution or were ordered to pay the restitution, it also gives the municipal court the ability to use a third-party collections agency to try to collect those funds. The result of the amendments is a clearer code that provides timeframes within a reasonable amount of time when we need to request restitution, when restitution needs to be paid, and provides victims the ability to take that order and file it in a state court to try to collect that judgment if it's a judgment. And it also provides shorter timeframes so that if a victim wants to take other actions, they can, without having to wait for the municipal court and possible other timeframes to lapse and them not being able to seek those. Any questions?
Thank you very much for the presentation, Assistant City Attorney Renteria. Member Woodward, I see you have your first question.
Yeah, a question on unpaid restitution to an outside third-party collector. So the court assigns that, and the collector takes, I don't know what the collector takes, 25% of what they collect, 50%, whatever it is. The victim in this, how are they getting full restitution, 100% restitution?
Yeah, our goal is to get the victim compensated fully for what their loss is. Currently, the code doesn't provide for an outside collection agency to take it. I understand that when something goes to collections, the collections agency takes their cut and then gives the rest to, in this case, it would be the municipal court. While those details haven't been worked out, our goal in this is to get the victims something. In a lot of these cases, victims are left with nothing. In some cases, they're left waiting for months or a year or even longer than a year and receive nothing. And in that time frame, they can't seek civil remedies anymore because all those time frames have already lapsed.
Can I add one thing, Councilmember Woodward? You did already pass an ordinance that laid the groundwork for this. Back in December, we had the second reading that authorized us, if we send any debts to a third-party collection agency, including restitution, we can add the reasonable cost of collection to the amount of restitution plus interest. So the goal is, let's say they have $100 in restitution. If we're paying the collection agency 25%, we add on 25% and then send it off so that we can get the victim close to the full amount of restitution. It doesn't always work that way because their 25% of 125 will leave a net of less than 100, but that was the goal of that ordinance. It laid the groundwork for this.
Great, thank you. Another question I have is, on this 91 days, I'm thinking of and this is actual, car accident where there is restitution. And the payment was $150 a month until paid off. And then the pandemic came. And no more payments came because the individual wasn't working, wasn't able to work. Does that 91 days, how does that fit into this?
The 91-day time frame only starts, that clock starts ticking at sentencing or conviction if they happen at the same time. While the case is pending, that 91 days isn't ticking. The 91 days only start happening at sentencing, which hopefully by that time we would have gathered our information and can just request it at that time. But once conviction is entered, we would have 91 days to make that request.
Okay, but not necessarily to collect.
No, they don't. It's not 91 days to collect. It's 91 days to request the restitution.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Member Russell.
So when restitution can be ordered, right, ordered to the defendant to pay restitution in that 91 days when you're requesting that, once it's set up, then what you were saying is that the victim can then, if they need to, go to small claims court or whatever, take civil action against the defendant to get the restitution?
Yes, the municipal court order of restitution will become a civil judgment in the favor of the victim, and they can then take that to a state court level to try to collect that judgment.
Okay, thank you.
Member Noonan-Camp, did I miss you or you good? Mayor Pro Tem.
Some time ago, when I first came onto this council, I recall a discussion about potentially getting restitution to people who were victims of crimes which were not prosecuted in municipal court. So my question is somewhat loosely related to that, although it does dovetail into this. This code establishes specific orders of restitution for specific victims. And my question is, would it be possible to establish some sort of municipal restitution fund where every defendant who was convicted of a municipal court violation paid a fine of X number of dollars into the restitution fund, and then these uncollectible matters could be paid out of a portion of that money?
So what you're talking about is it's called victims compensation. We've actually, through the victim compensation board is run by the district attorney's office.
Okay.
And through the victim advocate that works here in the municipal court, we've been able to get particular victims, usually victims of domestic violence, victims' comp money.
Okay.
They put in a request, it goes to the comp board, and they decide whether or not they'll give them or how much they'll give them. So, yeah, something like that already exists.
Okay.
We use their services through the municipal court. Would it be possible to set one here? I would have to look into that.
Okay. I'd be interested in doing something similar on a municipal level. Relative to that, I know that the process you described must be controlled by district court, right? You go to district court, you pay a $10 victims assistance fund fee or whatever it is.
It is, yes, it's funded by a state court fee that
Okay.
people who go to state court and get convicted of criminal matters pay into, I think it's called bail funds.
Okay.
And they pay into basically the 18th Judicial District Attorney's Victims Compensation Fund.
Okay. I'd just like to earmark that as a potential item for the future, some sort of city level similar program.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Any further questions for Assistant City Attorney Renteria? If not, can I get a motion to approve 11A1?
I'll move 11A1.
Thank you, Member Woodward. Could I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Anderson. Any further comments? Seeing none, can we please vote?
Member Anderson.
Aye.
Member Noonan-Camp.
Aye.
Member Russell.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward.
Aye.
Member Wink.
Aye.
Member Woodward.
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 7 ayes.
Mr. Renteria, thank you very much for the presentation tonight, and Happy New Year. Thank you, sir. Moving on to Mayor's Choice. I will keep it short. Just a reminder to everyone, we are having board and commission meetings next week. They're going to be held virtually. We will be starting at 5:45, us personally, to just go over the ground rules and just pick which question we're going to be asking. And then the interviews will begin at 6 o'clock, so just wanted to make that quick reminder. Council members' choice, anyone want to lead us off? Member Woodward.
Thank you. I have a couple items here. Regarding the PUD that's coming up, I have a question on the posting of the signs there. I have noticed, or went looking for the signs regarding the public hearing. And what was up were these dark colored signs that literally had to stop and for me get out of my truck and look at the sign, get up to it and look at it to see it. It was it's for P&Z. That was last week. I don't know if a new sign has gone up, but I hope the new sign isn't the same color background as that existing sign, because you can't see that sign. It's almost like somebody did something on purpose there. I don't know if community development posts that or if the applicant posts it, but I think the coloring on that should be different. So you can see a date, you can see what it is and read it. And so I'm asking the city manager to pass that on to community development.
Will do.
Second item I have is I want to comment on the snow plowing and snow removal over the last week and a half or 10 days. And I'm personally not real satisfied with what I've seen. The big snow that we had last week, I noticed hills such as Kenyon coming west on Kenyon from Broadway, going down the hill without sand on it or without ice slicer or something, and the same way coming up at night or during the evening hours, and knowing that people were going to be sliding away on that. I've noticed that at the end of blocks, residential blocks and blocks that had snow on them, there isn't ice slicer up to the end of the block. So there's ice slicer further back. But when you get to the end of the block to the stop sign and you step on your brakes, you're sliding, especially with some of the ice that we've had. Also, on the schools, I was just noticing today, I had a request last year, or earlier this year, regarding Cherry Lynn. And I know school doesn't start until next week, but removing the snow on Stanford Avenue, where they queue cars to come down Sherman Street. I believe it's Sherman. And the way they have it right now is I think they've tried to open up a lane and a half or something like that. And there will be cars stuck in there that will be queuing up and being stuck. So I hope, I know there's been changes up there in Public Works, but I think the snowplow people need to be reminded of what to do at a school. But, and also going down the streets, the residential streets, just in reading the memorandum or the email that came from the director earlier this week regarding the snow plowing and the preparation, and how citizen streets were really secondary and wouldn't be handled until all the other larger streets were taken care of, which is really different than what it's been in the past. I mean, going back in the past, where the big ones were handled as it was going, and so were residential streets, that one or two up and down the street. So that's my personal opinion and what I have observed. So I wanted to pass that on.
Thank you, Member Woodward. Member Anderson.
I just had a question for City Manager. We had a study session on short-term rental code, and I was looking to see if that had been, if there was any ordinance revisions scheduled for that or when it was coming. I couldn't find anything in the calendar. I just had a citizen that was interested in that subject and was wanting kind of a rough time frame, if we could give it to him.
I'll actually take that one, if
Okay.
that's okay with you.
Perfect.
I met with Community Development Director Brad Power today, and we discussed the current status of those revisions. They're still in process, given the holidays, and the staff member in my office that's working on it has been on vacation. But what he's planning to do is revise the ordinance and then bring it back for another study session, because council had directed quite a few revisions and things they wanted to take out and leave in. So he thought it would be better to bring it for a study session again. I believe January may already be full. But I think we're shooting for the beginning of February. But I know we all feel a sense of urgency on this. So we will, he said, in fact, today he was going to look for the next study session he could put it on.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
I do have one additional item on that. So right after the city attorney met with Director Power, I met with him and my regularly scheduled, and encouraged him to go back and view the videotape and have his staff count votes, essentially, a council member saying, I like this, I don't like that, and just make sure we didn't come to consensus on four council members on most of those items. I remembered a lot of those items being decided, and I think the mayor did a good job of facilitating that conversation. So he is this week, I'm gonna have his team go back and just make sure we don't have enough information to go ahead and craft that ordinance, knowing that time is of the essence.
Very good, thank you.
Anyone else with council member's choice? Mayor Pro Tem.
Just a couple of things. I spent part of my day on Christmas with the police department, attending the 3-shift roll calls. First roll call at 6:30 in the morning, second roll call at 3:30 in the afternoon, and third roll call at 9 o'clock at night. Makes for a long day, but not nearly as long as the day they had on Christmas. It was a busy day in the police department on Christmas, and roll call is just an opportunity for me and for any of my peers who are interested in joining me I try to stop by a couple times a year, just to show my appreciation for the police department. I learn something new every time I attend a roll call. So anybody who's interested should chat with the city manager, and I hope you'd consider letting me tag along with you when you go. And I want to extend my thanks for all the officers that worked on Christmas Day. It was a rough day. The weather wasn't great, and it was very, very busy. So thank you. Secondly, I wanted to revisit a little bit of our conversation that we had at the beginning regarding process on the public hearing that is to take place on January 17th, I believe it is. Tuesday, January 17th.
18th, isn't it?
The 18th is a Wednesday on my calendar.
Keep getting the dates wrong. All right, yeah, you're right.
Anyway, I want to make sure we're clear. First of all, we are starting the meeting early, 6 o'clock. Secondly, we will allow virtual public comment, and I want to make sure that the rest of council is okay with my suggestion that we issue the notice, since we know what's going to be on that meeting, early, so we can get it posted ASAP, so that anybody who is interested in finding out the details of that meeting has the details straight from the source and can contact the clerk and has instructions for how to participate in public comment, either virtually or in person. And that would be a deviation from our normal procedure.
I'll speak up just because I was thinking about this when you first mentioned it. Why a different process for the posting for this PUD versus other PUDs?
Well, I think we've learned some things based on public feedback, and I think we should consider, just accepting the feedback we've gotten from the public and using that and making the meeting as open as possible. And I don't personally see the harm in issuing the notice earlier. We know what's going to be on that agenda. We know that it's the only thing that's going to be on that agenda, or at least that's our plan. So why not just open it up now?
And I'll just voice, I am uneasy about making that change. The only reason why, I think the calendar kind of fell right in order to make this the only agenda item. I'm concerned about in the future when there's other PUDs that are coming forward that we will try to do backflips to kind of keep it as the only item. I don't think that should be the case. I think the process is very consistent. We've been very consistent with the PUD. Nothing's changing for this PUD versus others. The only thing is that we have a clear night for it. So we decided to move in that direction just because we kind of saw that there was going to be a lot of feedback. But I'm a little bit uneasy about actually making any other changes to the posting of the PUD for this specific night. So I guess that's my viewpoint on it. But I'll let Member Anderson go and then any other members. Go ahead, Member Anderson.
I think we should be consistent. If we need to make a change to the procedure for how we notice these, then it should apply to all future meetings as well. Which I'm not opposed to it all. I suppose that's in our development code, the PUD process and the posting timelines, or is this just posting a public meeting? Is it or is it just the process for posting a public meeting? Sorry,
I'm sorry, I was asking a question about why it was January 17th, not the 16th. I thought, red alert. I realize it's a holiday. Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, I was just wondering if what's the legal requirement here? Is this a part of the PUD process in Title 16, or is this just our posting of public meetings applies to this, or is it a different posting requirement?
I'll have to look to see if there's anything specifically regarding PODs. Off the top of my head, I don't think there is. I think we post public hearings and public meetings the same way.
Yeah.
And perhaps the city clerk could weigh in on that as well. But I do agree that if we are going to change the way we post them, if there's a better way to do it to provide better notice, I prefer we do it for everything. And of course, if we are going to change it, I prefer we provide more notice rather than less, just as a general rule, to ensure we're protecting everyone's due process and property interest rights.
And then I think there's two slightly separate issues, one would be posting the legal public notice in the public, posting place. And the second would be just getting the word out on social media, which I think we should be doing that for all significant, which I think we do a pretty good job of communications on that. So in terms of the official posting, I think we should just stick with whatever the requirement is unless we need to change it. But as far as communications goes, I think they're pretty good at getting it out there. And if this is a secret, then it shouldn't be.
Anyone else want to weigh in? Member Noonkemp?
I'll just weigh in and say that I agree with the mayor. I'm uncomfortable making a specific exception to our policy for one agenda item, especially when it's a quasi-judicial issue where I feel we would be weighing in a way that would be inappropriate to deviate from our process unless it's consistent across all of our PUD processes. And so I would, I've been a very strong and will continue to be a very strong proponent for ensuring that the public knows about our public hearings, but I don't support changing it in this ad hoc way.
Anyone else want to weigh in? I think there's at least three of us, but Mayor Pro Tem.
That clarifies it for me. I'll withdraw the request. The issue here, I think, is that it deals with the meeting notice for a council session. And the procedure for council sessions is we usually don't have the agenda locked until the mayor-manager meeting, which occurs the previous Wednesday. In this case, we do have, we know pretty well that the agenda is not going to change. But I understand the concerns and I appreciate those. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Member Russell.
I would just like to weigh in on something Councilmember Woodward shared about the posting of signs. In the code, I believe there is a requirement of what the signs need to be and what the signs need to look like. And I brought that up one time in the area over here around City Center, that city was using signs that, when we built a shed, we had to go down and pay a boatload of money for a sign that had to have certain size lettering and everything. So I think that cities should follow the same rules that the people have to follow.
I recall that conversation, Member Russell, so.
Thank you.
Yeah. Go ahead, City Clerk.
I was just gonna let everyone know that the legal posting, the legal notice is already posted on the city's website and will be posted in the Herald this Thursday. It comes out, so.
Thank you, City Clerk. Anyone else for Council Member's Choice? If not, we will move to City Manager's Report.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of items. First of all, the county has invited all of you to attend their elected official swearing in. It'll be January 19th at 5:30 at the Arapahoe County Fairgrounds. And that's going to be actually 7 elected officials and including 2 commissioners. I am looking into the public notice on the PUD site to see exactly what that is. It's a little hard to tell from the photograph of that sign, but as Member Russell alluded to and City Clerk Carlisle mentioned a couple of years ago, you all changed that to be a red background, white lettering, so we'll confirm that. I also wanted to mention that many of you already call Assistant City Manager Tim Dodd Deputy City Manager, and as of January 1st, he is actually the Deputy City Manager. And so when I congratulate him, it's a title change only. But he has added operations to his assignment, so he will be, in addition to the administrative services of HR, IT, and finance, he'll also be overseeing public works. So I saw him feverishly taking notes about the snow
First time
removal.
finding this out, so thanks.
I know he was taking notes, Member Woodward, on the snow plowing. The last thing, a little more difficult, Arapahoe County Office of Emergency Management reached out to us late last week about the migrant sheltering issue. In addition, you probably heard various elected officials in Denver are reaching out to surrounding communities, asking for assistance. Our leadership team will be discussing options for that, just in case council, does want to have a discussion on that. Mayor Sierra, I know you brought this up, I think, at the meeting when I was on vacation. So we're gonna be discussing that, obviously with the next two council meetings, one being boards and commissions and one being the public hearing. We would need to, maybe do a 5:30 start or something if you wanted to add that in the next 2 weeks. Otherwise, we would just be looking at the following week. So just wanted to get council's temperature on that, your level of interest, and if we wanted to try to schedule that either earlier or just at the next available regular time, or if at all.
I guess I'll voice in. I wouldn't mind trying to do it next week if possible, before the boards and commission meetings. Obviously, that would mean an early start since we're already saying 5:45. I think it would probably be a little difficult trying to do it on the 17th, just because we started saying that the only thing on the agenda is the 17th, but I would also be open to doing another night if we have to do that. So I do think that this is something that's important for us to discuss. So I would be open to having that discussion at some point in the nearest future. So I'm not sure if anyone disagrees with me on that, but feel free to chime in. All right. City Manager Lewis, continue.
Yeah, if there are no objections to that, we'll just schedule that at the next time available. Is that what you said, Mayor?
Well, I like to try to do it next week
Oh, okay.
before the boards and commission meetings if possible. I
We
would
can
also
do
be
that.
open to a special meeting if we have to, so.
Okay.
Point of information. Do you mean, Mayor, then prior to 5:45?
Correct.
Yeah,
it
when we
meets-
start moving there, I'm having trouble with my job.
Yeah,
So
I
show up
completely
earlier
understand.
and earlier and earlier. Yeah.
Thank you, Member Wink. So I do think that this is a high priority for the city to be discussing just because of the, the circumstances and the suddenness of it. So I do think that we need to find a time to do that as soon as possible.
Okay. We'll discuss it during Mayor Manager. meeting, if
Correct.
That's okay.
Thank you. Anything else, City Manager Lewis?
That's all.
All right, perfect. All right, everyone. This meeting is now adjourned. It's just before 9 o'clock. Everyone have a good evening, and we'll see you next Monday virtually. Have a good night.